Hi, hopefully we're live and we can welcome you to Global Effects. Come on in. Any of the posters you see on the wall are things that we have, are projects that we've worked on. I'm going to try to set up my iPad here to see if I can do this. You have to bear with me. I'm sure this whole thing is going to be painful. Let's see, where can I find live? Hopefully we're live. Are we live?
We have two people.
We have two people. Okay. Welcome, both of you. Come on in. We'll take a look. So this is the rental department at Global Effects. And there we go. There's the live thing. Come on in. We'll take a look. All right. This is the rental department at Global Effects. So I got it here. So let's see. We have all two people. So we'll take a look around. I'll try to take questions, try to keep an eye on people that have questions. So we have the specialty costume stuff we do is basically any specialty costume is involving materials that don't fold. So plastic, wood, metal, leather, and the community within the film industry, most standard costumes involve pattern making and sewing and soft fabrics. But when you get into specialty costume, most costume designers are a little intimidated. They want expertise in other materials, and that's where we come in. So on this suit for Adam Sandler for the Spaceman, the fabric is actually all quilted. It's really hard to see in this, but there's like a diamond quilt in it. It's been dyed a specific color. And so on the fabric side, we're doing things that costumers are more traditionally comfortable with. But then when it comes to the hard goods, because of our expertise with space, we're able to replicate all of the components that would be on a real, in this case, Orlan suit, Russian Orlan suit. Almost actually in this case, almost all of these pieces I drew in the computer. I used SolidWorks, and we then 3D printed, and in some cases we 3D printed and used the 3D prints, but in most cases we'll make a mold and make a casting because we need to be multiples and we want them out of tougher materials. And as 3D printing changes, we're able to just use straight 3D prints. Kind of a fun thing here in the palm of the glove, and this is the same thing that's on a real glove. Is it one? The palm material, and this is pretty funny, I looked at it numerous times and was trying to figure out what in the world, why does that look familiar to me? And I searched and searched and searched and searched to find that little dot material. And then I remembered as a kid, we had a ping pong table, and that's ping pong paddle surface material. And this is identical to what's on the real Russian glove. In this case, because the designer wanted this unusual blue color, we had to make this a tan color. So we ended up making a mold and casting our own in silicone and bonding them to the gloves. So we'll walk over here. This is a Mark III spacesuit. This is kind of the parent suit to what's currently being developed as the XEMU at NASA. This was developed for the extended stays of the Apollo program. They were going to go to the moon and stay longer. And so they were making suits that had a much higher degree of mobility. And this is a common misconception that these big bulky suits are somehow a problem. They're not. They actually give you a greater range of mobility than the soft suit does. And suits like the Martian, which are known as a mechanical counterpressure suit, that's really kind of science fiction. They really don't work. They've done mechanical counterpressure suits back in the late 60s, I think. It was called the Web Activity Suit, I think it was called. And the problem is you need to apply pressure to the surface of the body completely evenly. And with mechanical pressure, the squeeze suit, right? All the hair follicles on your body originate on the surface of the skin in a pit, which means the mechanical counterpressure suit can't put pressure there. whereas a suit like this, it has a gas volume in it, can. So when you come out of a mechanical counterpressure suit, all of the areas you have hairs all end up. So James Supp asks, how hard is it to maintain and repair spacesuit inventory, and what about using accurate materials aren't really made for this kind of abuse they get in film sets? Yes, so that's one of the reasons that we're different than many other companies, because most costume rental companies, because most costume rental companies aren't really set up for the required infrastructure to make the repairs and maintenance on suits. And we'll show later on, I'll show you some of our maintenance areas and how we're able to do that. So we'll continue on. Let's see. Oh, sound is good. Okay, so we're still there. Thank you, Paul A. Well, let's step over here. We'll take a look. So there was a question about whether or not this was a hatch. Oh, before I get to the hatch, sorry. I got to thank Joey, Norman, and Adam for coming here with the tested crew. It was a lot of fun, and I hope Adam can come back, and I don't know, maybe we can build a spacesuit together or something. It would be kind of fun. But what we think is, okay, so people asked about this hatch and whether or not it was the one that Adam did for Project Egress. And it isn't. I'll think of his name in a second. It just went out of my head. A fellow did that. Oh, I want to say Bart, not Bart. Anyways, I'll think of it. The fellow who did all of the scans of the hardware is what they used to create the Project Egress hatch that was made by a bunch of different craftsmen. I took some of that data, and I had a client ask me to do this hatch project about 6 months earlier than I knew anything about the tested project. And so I did about 170 something drawings of the hatch, and these are all machined out of aluminum. And if we turn it on, I can make all the latches work. And then we have a readout here in the back, or a NFT screen, and I can set it up so that you can turn the entire hatch around and have it face the other way. And I did it a little early. The image has changed. I have to set up some sort of Bluetooth where it will change automatically. But there we go. So now you see the Apollo 11 command module interior, and what the view would be if you were on the outside of the hatch. Now, this particular version of the hatch is all stripped of the Kapton silver material, and I have one in the other room we'll show you with the Kapton on it. But this is what it looks like in the Smithsonian, where you're seeing the honeycomb and some of the damage from the heat. So this is a really fun project. Let me take a look at a couple other questions here. Let's say, can you show us the Stranger Things yellow biohazard suit from Astor Archives? Absolutely. We'll take a quick detour. We'll come down here. My cameraman at the moment, since we had a equipment malfunction, I think there was a loose nut on the handle. I don't think I knew how to operate it. My cameraman is our rental department manager, and he's pointing. Where did it go? The Stranger Things suit. Oh, he's pointing. I've gone to the wrong aisle, of course. I don't even know my own stock. There we go. Okay. So there's one of them. So we made 3 or 4 of these, I think. Do you remember how many we made, Wes?
At least 2. One for Winona, one for...
Yeah, I thought we made a stunt one, I think, as well. But anyways, so there's one of the bigger ones. And the helmet. Here's the helmet. Oh. Oh, that's right. It's in our front display case. These, by the way, since we're in the biohazard aisle, these lab suits were originally done for the movie Outbreak. And prior to Outbreak, there really weren't any hard shell helmets. And all biohazard suits look like half-inflated Gumby pool toys. They really weren't sexy. So Erica Phillips, the costume designer, hired us to come up with designs, and Patrick Totopoulos was working for me at the time and designed this helmet and then the field helmet. And this is a version of the field helmet. This particular one has a red body, but these were vacuum-formed Kydex. And the originals for Outbreak were vacuum-formed styrene. They wanted a really, really tight, detailed pull in the vacuum, so we use the styrene because it's easier to pull. We'll talk a little bit about the technical things of vacuum in a little bit. And then they've been used in literally hundreds of other shows. So we started manufacturing them. We've done them in white, we've done them in gray, we've done them in other colors, and then of course the one for Stranger Things. Let's see, what do we got? Let's see, famous costumes. What are the most famous costumes? Well, it depends, I guess, on the fan, which is the most famous costume. That was asked by Paul A. I mean, we have here Ryan Gosling's suit from First Man, as you saw in the tested video. I have another little short on these suits. I have Gary Oldman's armor from Bram Stoker's Dracula. I did the flight suit for Contact for Jodie Foster to wear. I built Klingon armor. Yeah, I've you know, again, how famous it is depends on what your favorite show is, I guess. So we'll take a detour. Since in Adam's video, you saw pretty much this aisle, and if you haven't seen the tested video, you should watch it. He's got some great stuff, and it was a super joy to have Adam here to see all this. But we're going to step into the side room, and here is kind of a cool piece. This is, I'm going to step up inside here. This is a full-size mock-up of a real spacecraft that was part of the initial, what they call the Crew Transfer Vehicle, or the CXV. When NASA first announced they were going to privatize or put a contract out for a private spacecraft to transfer crew to the space station, I was at that initial meeting just outside of the Johnson Space Center, and one of the people I knew, Gary Goddard, got asked to do he got picked for a proposal. So he hired us to build a mock-up of the spacecraft. Now this is missing the outer aeroshell. This is just the cabin area, but it was designed with these cool soft seats that could rotate into either for launch. Of course, you want your back facing the G-force, so you would be in this position for launch, and then you could turn around and be in the other position for takeoff. And then the seats could then be unstrapped and stowed, and you'd have all this cargo area open. But that's how we got this. And then for the movie Apollo 18, we built this full-scale lunar module interior. Now this is very accurate to a later mission Apollo, and because it was built for the movie Apollo 18, it was supposed to have been a lunar module used after Apollo 17, and of course Apollo 18, 19, 20, and 21 were all canceled. So the actual lunar lander that should have flown on the real Apollo 18 is what we used on From the Earth to the Moon. So if you watch that series, the lunar module that you see on the lunar surface is a real lunar module, and it is the one from Apollo 18. It's pretty cool. It's now in Long Island at the Cradle of Aviation Museum. But ours is completely fabricated. It's an aluminum body with steel framing, and it's what's known as wild. So this whole section here can be unbolted and taken out, so you can put cameras here. We can do the same with the other side. I can take this whole section out, fly it out, put a camera there. We do the same with this side. Or I can take the center section out, I can take the roof off, or I can take the floor off. And any one of these panels that comes out, the structure is still maintained so the thing will hold itself together. And this is pretty typical for sets called wild sets, where you can take a whole wall off of a set and still shoot. Now over here we have what would be the back section, And this back section would actually fit flat against the cabin. So you get this solid wall right here. So when you're standing in here, so Buzz would be here, Neil would be there, and you'll see if I open the door, this would be the surface of the moon. You can see there's really no room. The moon isn't out there, actually. It's just our warehouse. You can see there's no room. So it was really hard to swap positions. And then this is the primary life support system of the lunar module. This is actually the top of the ascent engine, because remember the lunar module was 2 spacecraft. One, the bottom section, which landed, had the top section on top of it, and then the top section would take off. Did you have something, Wes? Okay. And then this would be the hatch. Let's see if I can open this without it crashing on my head. That would be the hatch that would lead to the command module. So that's our lunar module interior. This is a copy of the Apollo seismic experiment. This is part of the ALSAP science project that had a bunch of experiments they set on the surface of the moon. This is a sci-fi rover originally done for a Jeep commercial, for Michael Bay Jeep commercial, and they gave it to us. But what's fun is these fenders came out of a mold that was molded directly off a real rover fender. It was completely redone for a show, let's see, it was called Not Space Between Us. If you were wondering what that beep was, the bleep on Adam's video, it was for The Last of Us, which is what I said on that suit over there. This is for The Last of Us. And if you've seen that episode, Last of Us, this is the hatch. So it's very similar to the one that was over there, but this is the actual hatch that was used for that episode. I'll look at some questions here. Let's see. Now, let's see. Love the hatch, big strings. All right, well, we'll go back towards our spacesuits and see what we have. So as Adam talked about, we have all the different shuttle EMUs, the current spacewalk suit, and the WET-F, or the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, also known. So WET-F stands for Water Weightless Environment Training Facility, and NBL stands for Neutral Buoyancy Lab. So that's the big pool that they go in. Now the suits they use in the pool, they're real suits. It's just that they have been modified to better work in a pool because they don't really need a life support system. So they have basically just a plastic backpack that's all drilled out because it just needs to be there for the volume so that the astronaut knows where he can go and where he can't, where the space is big enough for the suit. Up on the wall here, we have set dressing photographs. Now this is a common thing that is a bit of a confusion in the prop collecting world and the fan world about props, set dressing, and costumes. So a prop is anything that's scripted that the actor is going to handle. So if it's scripted that I have this iPad, this becomes a prop. If I'm going to wear it, it's a costume. But there's an overlap. So for instance, technically, backpacks and helmets are props. I'm not sure why it was decided that way, but most of the time the costume department takes care of them. But on some shows, the prop department goes, well, we want to take care of the helmets and the backpacks. Anything that is not handled by the actor is set dressing. So all of these pictures on the wall would be set dressing, or even these suits could be set dressing if they're just in the background hanging out. So that's generally the difference between props, sets, wardrobe, and so forth. Let's see here. We'll go back to, how did I get out of, oops, come on. Technically challenged here again. There we go, back to that. So we have, as Adam talked about, we have some of the headsets. We have the mini workstation, which goes on the front of the shuttle suit. You see this a lot of times in photographs. It mounts to the front of the EMU, and this is what holds all their tools. We have tether hooks. We have oxygen hoses. We have a little, this is a buddy breather system. This was a system the Apollo astronauts had in case they needed to share the backpack. Say one backpack had a failure. They could plug this into the suit and connect the other suit directly to it. And so they could both astronauts could breathe off the same backpack. Interesting note, there's going to be a video coming up and tested. Norman says it'll be out next week. Going to feature Adam with some really cool things that you're going to see. Keep an eye out in the back. There's 2 spacesuits. And I had so much in my mind that I completely forgot to mention. If you look at the spacesuit in the back, if you know Apollo suits, you know they have snaps and Velcro that go all the way around them. On that suit is a fabric cover that actually is Neil Armstrong's cover that would have gone to the moon had they kept those covers. The reason they got rid of those covers is because of that buddy breathe system. Neil couldn't get the cover off with his gloves on and get the buddy breathe system hooked up, so they decided to ditch those covers. A little side Easter egg note for you. Let's see here. Well, we got a Roman chariot, a Roman ballista, some of our lunar tools. You could swing around and see our lunar tools there. We've recently been replicating a lot of the lunar tools really accurately. In fact, the hammers that we've done both the heavyweight and the lightweight hammer. They are made directly from blueprints, and we'll take a look at some of the drawings that we get. It's taken me a lot of years to develop relationships with these different companies and personnel to sort of, it's not that it's a secret, it's just a lot of work for them to share it, and many times movie people don't pay attention to it and don't really care, and they found that I do care and I do want to make those details, so we've been able to share that information. You doing okay, Wes? Okay. I don't want to wear him out. We thought we were going to do this with a gimbal, but it had plans of its own. So anybody out there that knows Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the Val Kilmer, Robert Downey Jr. movie, I got to play Protocop. And this is an earlier version of what we ended up using for Protocop. This is a puppet. It's a complete mechanical puppet with springs and had RC servo head and RC servo eyes. This was for a Hong Kong action film called Gen Y Cops. And we had a suit version as well. And for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, we made it blue. And I have lifts in the shoes. And the tough part was I had to wear this thing with the lifts in the shoes. I had to hide behind the couch and stand up and try to untangle myself and stand up. And then, of course, I'm scared and I fall backwards. And you'll see the movie. But I'll do an episode of one of my 40 years of movies in 40 seconds. I'll do an episode on this because there's a couple other funny anecdotes about some of the props in that show. The other robots we've done, if you've seen the Big Brother, is it Big Brother? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Zingbot. That was a robot we built, and it was actually the mate to a silver version of this little robot, and it was for a Japanese commercial, and I wore the big one, and one of our employees wore this one for the commercial, and then we started renting them out, and then one day I saw the poster for Argo, and like, oh my, this is our robot. And then the first thing I noticed was the head wasn't buckled. And I'm like, oh, but then when I saw the movie and saw that they're sitting around at a table and just a script read through, I thought, okay, I hate seeing things with our stuff that's wrong, but we have a giant rat and a giant polar bear, and these are actually suits that fit me. And we built these a long time ago. So the rat head here, he's getting pretty tired. He was actually used in a Vanity Fair photo spread from Princess Bride as the rodent of unusual size. And if you look at the photograph, it's a reunion of all the cast. This guy is over by the craft service table, of course. That's where I'd be. And you'll see it's this stretch hair. And if I lift it up, and the camera can see it, and you'll see there's my head cast underneath. And there's this piece that clamps to my face and my head. So it has to match my face and head perfectly. Otherwise, it would hurt way too much. And we have these extra cables on here to help support weight. And articulate some of the pieces with my head movement. And then underneath is a whole a muscle suit in multiple layers, and the same thing with our bear. So our bear has two muscle suits that sort of sit one on top of the other with muscle groups in different areas, then a spandex suit that goes over the whole thing, and then a spandex stretch hair suit that goes over that. And yes, it's hot. I definitely use my cool suit. And as you move, all those muscle groups move around. And if you've seen the movie Harry and the Hendersons, my best friend Kevin is the guy who played Harry, and Rick Baker did the suit, and uses the same basic technique with these muscle groups as pads that can move around under the hair. They made a stunt suit using the same stretch hair made by National Hair Technology in Massachusetts, but for the hero suit, it was hand-tied yak hair, and it was incredible. And you can see the difference if you see the scene where Harry goes flying off the roof of the station wagon in the beginning. If you really got a good eye, you can look at the hair and you see that it's a little less realistic looking compared to the rest of the movie, and that's because it's a stunt suit. Because I think the hand-tied suit, it was made in '86, I think the hand-tied suit they said was close to $40,000 to make, just the hair suit, and they made 3 of them, I think. Oh, we have any other comments while we're over by this? Let's see. Paul A. The Greenwich armor? Not yet. No, we'll get to the Greenwich armor. I know that's something that people... Hey, Chris, see, Astor Archives. Hey, Chris, do you have the 2001 Space Odyssey spacesuits used in the IBM ad? We do. I have the backpack here. So that's one of the backpacks. And we'll do I'll do an episode on this as well. But it turns out that nobody thought to ask for the rights to use those suits, which completely blows me away given the huge companies involved. But at the very last minute, and we built those, by the way, in 2 weeks, 2 complete suits from the ground up in 2 weeks. At the very last minute, we had to change some details. So we ended up changing the backpack, or the chest pack. So we made the chest pack look like that. But we also did the suit for the Gucci Stanley Kubrick celebration, and that had, of course, much more correct pieces in it. And then the suits, they're down in our sew file. They're slowly rotting away because that vinyl material just doesn't last. And so, but a friend of mine, and I'm hoping to maybe share this with you guys, a friend of mine has the original red Bowman helmet. And hopefully we'll get a chance to look at that. So that'll be kind of a fun piece. Saddles. So we do period saddles because my other area is medieval arms and armor, medieval history. So we do period saddles. These are a bunch of saddles we did for Last Samurai, the Tom Cruise film. Some of the armor we have isn't completely real, all rubber. And since I'm sure a lot of folks are also interested in technique and how we do things, we'll step into the shop and I'll show you where we make a lot of this stuff. I'm also looking at pictures, questions here. How often? James Supp asks, how often have costumes you've rented disappear from set? Not that often, but there have been a couple of times where something's not come back, and we have what we call loss and damage. Basically, you pay a fee. When you rent out an item, just like when you rent a car, you say, we agree that this car is worth X dollars, and if it totally gets destroyed, I'm liable for that amount of money. So we have the same thing with the value. Well, if something doesn't show back up, of course, we send a note to the production company, hey, this didn't show up, maybe it got put somewhere else, and then the response of, oh, we can't find it, we can't find it. Okay, well, this is what it costs. Oh, we found it! So sometimes we put a higher price on it just because we don't want it to disappear. But I have had a few things. I had a really nice 15th century barboot helmet, really beautiful shape, really nicely made, and it disappeared, and I'm sure it's sitting in somebody's office right now. But we were talking earlier about maintenance. So this area here is sort of our maintenance area, and you'll see some helmets here on the table in mid work. So like some of the pivot mechanisms, it's for this helmet here that would go here. This is a copy of an S1030 helmet, and again, watch the tested video. We talk about this helmet. And we generally make our own visors. In this case, this is a real visor. This is a real one from not necessarily an S1030, but an earlier one. And I think the date on this real visor is October 22nd, 1963 was when this visor was made. But we generally make our own visors. I generally don't use artifacts. This one is for a collector, and he supplied us with an original visor, so we'll clean this up and we'll end up using a real visor. But generally, we keep spares, so each one of these, so there's an ACES helmet, the EMU, the S1030. Each one of these houses all the components for a helmet or the detail components for a suit. And then we have our reference materials here to get somebody familiarized with it. So like in an ACES suit, advanced crew escape system, all the labeled parts. So this is a composite of some of the NASA available things or stuff available online, and the parachute pack. And then we've done close-ups of all the different little bits of hardware and what they're called. So that way you're familiar with the jargon, as it were, for the suit. And then we show how we assemble some of the different parts and what those parts are made of. And so those numbers will show up here where you'll see the part numbers. So that's how we are able to maintain the maintenance. And then we'll have a build list. So in the case if we're going to make an ACES suit, I have this build list. And is it going to be machined? Does it need to be engraved? Is it molded? Is it cast? What are you doing? And then when it's done, you can check it off. And so we kind of have a punch list to build the suit. And that's how we do it. Now, some of our suits will do vacuform pieces, and some of them will do carbon. So I'll pull up this backpack here. So this is a vacuum bag carbon fiber shell. It's very light, but it's very, very strong. And we have a little metal rim that we've made for it to stiffen this where the two parts have to unbolt and come apart. But we have a fan system in here, batteries. Sometimes we have communication equipment that we'll put in there. And the vacuform parts, this is a machine we built for vacuforming. Oh, let me grab my iPad so I don't lose it. So most machines that you see people doing vacuforming on are like this green one in the background. That's really a vacuum packaging machine. And what I mean by that is it's really not designed for true thermoforming of complex shapes. What you want is a machine that the plastic is held at a certain spot vertically. In this case, the plastic goes in this frame, and then this frame moves. Oh, I forgot to put the locks down. Anyways, the frame moves back into the heaters, and it can be heated from above and below, and we have separate switches for the heaters, so I can control how much heat the plastic gets. So if I need to make it hotter in a corner or hotter in the middle, I can do that. And then the pattern moves up and down via an air and hydraulic system. And now I can shove the pattern up through the plastic, which means that I can add things above to help shape the plastic. And here gives you an idea of the detail that you can get with vacuum forming. Now, they also talk about it being a female mold or a male mold. It's really a first surface mold or a second surface mold. Most of the vacuum form patterns that you see are second surface molds, meaning the mold would be on this side and I would vacuum form the plastic over it. In the case of the shield, this uses a first surface mold, meaning the first surface, that's the surface that touches the plastic. So the vacuum form got done this way, and so the pattern was on this side. And that's how you're able to get that level of detail. So that's our vacuum form machine. We also have a product line called Orbital Surplus, where we sell on eBay various extra pieces and some replica items. This friend of mine has the shuttle helmet. He has a plug that was used in Frank Borman's suit on Apollo 8. And when I saw it, I thought, wow, that looks like a shot glass. That's pretty cool. An actual plug that's gone to the moon, surface of the moon, or it hadn't gone to the surface, but gone around the moon. And so we decided to make these called Moonshot. and you can buy these on eBay. And we have them as just the flown water plug, which I'll show you the fitting that it goes in. And then we also have a red and blue version of the dust plug, and that would go into the outside of the fitting, and it would sort of look like that in a fitting. And these were used, they never went into space, but these were used for when they were doing service and maintenance on the Apollo suits to keep debris from being able to get into the suit. Dracula armor. This is a limited edition bust that we're going to do. It came out of the original molds, and there's going to be another whole series on the Dracula armor. I did one already, but we're going to get into details about the Dracula armor and the trials and tribulations of getting this made. But the original all had to be sanded down and used, the masters had to be used from molds that had not gotten completely finished, because we did what we call snaps. We did the sculpture pretty close, took a snap mold, then a fiberglass piece was to be made, and then it was to be sanded out, made perfect, and then new molds were to be made. Well, we never got to the new molds, and so we had to use the fiberglass parts, and it was a big disaster, but we'll get into details of that. But this one has all been sanded and detailed out like the one hero suit that is currently in the Coppola winery. And then we have a couple other projects. We're doing a replica of the Apollo rake, and I'm currently working on, these are called, here, these are called Coke fittings. These are the parachute fittings that go on the SR-71, and you lift up this, pop that down, and then this comes out, and then you close it and it locks in. And so these are being done for another client, and I'm making some extras. I also have some of these available on the orbital surplus page. And I have to make a little assembly jig for these, so it's a little 3D printed jig that I can use to hold the various parts of the fitting in the position I need while I tension the springs. Over here we have some of the Apollo fittings we're doing. We're doing some training fittings for NASA, and for some additional fittings for some collectors. And there's another Adam Savage video coming out, so we're not going to get into too much detail on this. You'll have to watch the next tested video. Norman says it'll probably be out next week, but we're going to talk about all these fittings and how they work, and the fact that there's real pieces here, like these are all real Apollo fittings that we've modeled from, and all of our fittings work just like the real fittings. So we'll talk about those later. And oh, that suit that I told you has a cover layer, so the camera was over there, and it's this suit, and you won't be able to see these fittings because, and I feel so stupid, Neil Armstrong's actual cover was on this suit, and I forgot to point it out. I couldn't believe how dumb I was. We have another Dracula armor here. This was originally made for Planet Hollywood. It was bought by a collector, and we are now refinishing it because it got pretty beaten up. Of our mold shop over here, let me take a quick look at questions. And we've got to the Dracula armor. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. So Viva Madden, and we've got to the Dracula armor. Hooray! But do you happen to have the Loki mask? And who was behind the concept? Why Loki? How did it let's see. How did it come out so otherworldly enchanting? Well, it was talent and skill. No, it was actually, we had a basic design the art department supplied us, and then between myself and a fellow named Harvey Hubert, we sculpted it. And here is one of the original molds. It's getting a little tired, but that's one of the original molds, and I think this is the last casting that we'll probably get out of that mold. We had one other mold that disintegrated, so we're going to probably remold this. And then I will do a video on our molding technique and how we do molds. It's a technique I developed, I think, from the first Terminator movie, when I had to make all the rubber guns and rubber weapons. And this is a technique that is really simple. I've seen a lot of videos on mold making, and I can tell you that some of them have good, very usable techniques, but most of them have something on them that you could really shortcut, and there's a either a more universal or a better way to go about it. And, you know, I hear all the time, well, yeah, you know, there's more than one way to do that. And I go, you're right, there is more than one way to do that. And they used to say there are more, you know, there's a ton of ways to skin a cat. Well, yeah, there are. And I can guarantee you there's one way that's best for the cat. And so with these molds, or with any technique, there's usually one much better way based on the criteria, either your skill or the thing you're trying to do. So this mold technique is sort of along that line. It shows you how to make molds. I'll show you how to make molds fairly quickly with really good repeatability for almost any project. But we'll do that as a separate video. Let me take a look here. So Paul A. says, I apologize for my lack of homework in what you do, but what is your expertise in costume making? So far, I saw a lot of top-tier space costumes. So while we're standing here in the mold area, my father was in the aerospace business in the East Coast in Connecticut. And so growing up, I grew up around an aerospace welding machine company. He did parts on the Apollo program and on Shuttle and a lot of big defense projects. And it was a small job shop. His shop, matter of fact, was probably about the same size as mine. And I learned to run a mill and a lathe and weld when I was very young. I was probably 12 years old when I think I was probably 12 or 13 when I made my first knife out of 440C stainless all machine. Matter of fact, I almost got thrown off a dive boat because I learned to swim before I could walk. So I was into diving really early. And I was on this dive boat and I had my dive knife. And the guy said, wow, that's a cool knife. Where'd you get it? And I said, well, I made it. He goes, you didn't make this. I said, no, I made it. He goes, kid, don't lie to me. I know you didn't make this. I'll throw you off this boat. Okay. And my parents' hobby was auto racing. Well, when the Apollo space program ended, my father went from like 40 employees down to 8 and almost went out of business. And I remember in school that during the Great Depression, people still went to the movies. So I thought, well, maybe I want to get into the film industry. That sounds kind of exciting. And at that point, I was very interested in magic, excuse me. I was interested in magic. And then I got interested in makeup effects. And eventually that turned into interest in stunt work. But with my parents' hobby auto racing, I was always around all sorts of different craftsmen. So I learned all these different techniques. And the way my father taught, the way most people, I'll give you a better example, most people are taught how to make something in what I refer to as the cake mix model. You learn to make something, it's take this, add this, do this, get this. Now you know how to do that, but you don't really know how each of those things actually works and what they're actually doing and how they relate to other things. But the language style of teaching is that you learn all the letters, and you learn the sounds the letters make, and you learn the sounds the letters make next to other letters, and then you learn how to make words, and then, of course, sentences and so forth. So when you see a new word, you can sound it out. And that's the way I learned how to make things. I was told how a saw works, how to glue, what's actually happening with chemicals and when you're casting or when you're machining or welding, whatever. And so, you know, people go, oh my God, you're a genius. Am I a genius because I know how to spell cat and I know how to spell hat? I mean, it's like one letter different. It's no big deal. And I never realized until I started doing aerospace work, because I did get into the who I was friends with as a kid, said, yeah, there's no secret handshake, you know. And so I got involved in motion pictures, and then I got building spacesuits. And then I started being asked to build spacesuit stuff for NASA and some aerospace companies. And it wasn't until I started working with them that I realized my upbringing was not normal in the knowledge that I had acquired. It was sort of outside the normal sphere of learning. And I had to, all of a sudden, I was in demand for things. So that's kind of where my skill level is. I can pretty much work in any one of the positions here. No, I'm by no means the best at any of them, but I can make molds, I can paint, I can do sewing, but they're much better. There are people that can sew much better. But you really have to have a sense of what all of those techniques are. One, so that you can draw on that knowledge to figure out how you're going to get something made, but also so you can understand what that specialist, that better sewing person, is doing and why, and ask the right questions. And so anytime you want to build something, the more knowledge you can have about all those subjects, it's very powerful, because you can ask intelligent questions and you can plan a little better than just being, oh, okay, I guess we got to use that, you know, kind of thing. Anyways, so that's that answer. Willie Oregon said, "Your voice sounds very familiar, but I don't know from where." I don't know. I've been compared to a couple people, but I don't know. So we'll go this way. Obviously, you know, you got to paint stuff, so we got a paint booth. So for people interested in the spacesuits and space shuttle, this is a real hard upper torso. So the hard upper torso is the part that's for the chest underneath the spacesuit. The real hard upper torso. This is a real plug. It's made out of really dense foam. There would be ways to attach hardware to this, and then they do the fiberglass composite over this plug, bonding in those pieces of hardware, and then they carve out the foam, and you end up with the hard upper torso of a space shuttle EMU. And this particular one is a medium here, and you can see some of the hardware in this foam piece for the holding it in the jig. And so what we did is we took that and we made a movie version, and we have aluminum plates here, and this is all fiberglass. And what we do is we do the composite layup on this side and that side, and then we'll cut it. I mean, ours don't have to hold pressure, but they have to be strong enough, because when the actor's in it and leaning, you know, moving inside, he puts a lot of force in this. So we have to make them pretty strong, but we also have to keep them really light. So we've done them in carbon fiber and fiberglass. Generally, we do them in vacuum bag carbon fiber. We'll do a detailed thing on that at some point in the future. And then for the helmet bubbles, with my armoring experience, we had a fellow, Greg Wozniak, hand formed this aluminum tool to make our pressure bubbles. And the reason there's this huge gap in there is because there are different alloys of acrylic. And there are some alloys that are cast and some alloys that are thermoformed. And I asked the supplier to make sure that he got me, I think it's acrylic G, I don't remember the letter designation now, but it was a specific acrylic alloy I want. And up to a certain thickness, that's the common acrylic. But once you get over a certain thickness, like I think it's 1/2 inch, once you get over 1/2 inch, then typically it shifts to a different type of acrylic that's more common. And I told the salesman, I absolutely need to have this one. Well, he assured me that's what it was. When we got the sheets, they had generic brown paper on them with no designation. We had this thing heated up, we had it under pressure, and it split because it wasn't really stretching, because this type of plastic, that particular type of acrylic doesn't stretch. And the whole thing scared the holy hell out of us. It was bang! And we're really lucky that all it did was stretch the flange of this thing, and so we never got around to fixing it. We've also used our skills in metal forming. This is the lower torso of the Mark III, and for those of you who watched the tested video, you saw me roll my eyes about how expensive the bearings are, and the bearings would mount to this. And all of this is all formed right into the aluminum, and so once we got this where we liked it, then we made a mold and we made them out of fiberglass. And I got another video at some point. I'll talk about our pewter casting. We got a casting room in the back, and I'll talk about the pewter casting that we were doing. And that's how we make some of our fittings. We touch on it in the video with Adam. This is the hatch with the Mylar, or in this case, Kapton. And Kapton is a high temperature plastic. And we can give you an example. If we look up here on the shelf, this is upside down, but this is a 1/6 scale lunar module I'm building. And you hear this referred to as gold foil. Well, it's not. It's not foil and it's not gold. It's actually the Kapton. And if we look here on the black, you can see this amber colored tape with the black through it, and you can see amber colored tape in areas. That's the Kapton. And Kapton is a high temperature plastic that is amber in color, and it's metallized with aluminum on the back side. And when you see the aluminum through the Kapton, it looks gold. And the darker color is thicker Kapton. So if you see a lighter gold, it's the thinnest Kapton, then there's the middle thickness of Kapton, and that's the thicker Kapton. And then this was stainless steel, blackened stainless steel on the real lunar module. So our capsule over here, our cover, our door, excuse me, this is real Kapton, and what you're seeing though is you're seeing the metallized side. And after it came back from its mission, as it passed through the atmosphere, most of the heat plume came well outside of the hatch, but enough heat was able to scorch some of the aluminum off the surface. And so if you see a picture of a just landed capsule, you see all these yellow splotches all over this. And what that is that's where the aluminum literally got burned off the surface, and you're seeing the yellow Kapton underneath. Here's some of the drawings that we did for the hatch, or that I did for the hatch. So like there's the hinge, and then each page has the individual components for the hinge. And then to test it, here's research, like there's a photograph of the real hinge. And then to test it, I would often print a half-scale version of the hinge to show, make sure that it is in fact working the way it should. So that's where we use 3D printing, sometimes to make actual parts, sometimes to do proof of concept. Let's take a quick look here. Thomas Essen, have you by any chance found any of the pieces that you made for Martians or spaced invaders? Well, it's funny that I would read this right here, because we'll do a quick side tour. This is where we keep all of our molds, patterns, and tooling. So you'll see there's signs on each of these. So these are all our Mercury molds. If you look here on the shelf, you'll see those are masters that were generally taken off of real helmets. When I'm fortunate enough to get a real helmet to mold, I will do it, and we will make a master, and then we'll go in and modify the master, either removing seals like we see here. This is the master, and then there's the same helmet, but we've removed the seals and a couple other little details so that when we make a fiberglass part, our part then can have the seals added. But the Martian, I just had that pattern out. Oh, here we go. Someone was asking about the Martian or spaced invaders, and there's the vacuform pattern for one of the helmets he was asking about. And this pattern is, the way this was made is we carved the rough one out of a dense foam. I vacuformed a thin skin of styrene over the foam. Then I vacuformed another skin over that one. I popped that off. We put hydrocal or hydrostone into that mold, popped that out, and then we used carving tools called rifflers, and we carved down all the surfaces and did all the finish work, and then we used that as a final vacuform. That was a pretty good technique. Now with 3D printing, we can pretty much either just 3D print the piece, or like we made 30 spacesuits in 10 days for Sabrina Carpenter's VMA video, and we 3D printed the bottom of the helmet, but we vacuformed the top, and we actually 3D printed the vacuform pattern for the top, and that was because the 3D prints were taking so long that I was worried about getting them all done. So if I only 3D printed part way up, I could get twice as many helmets out. And the vacuform, I vacuformed all of the tops in like 20 minutes. So the vacuforming is a much faster technique. But these are all the different patterns and molds. Here's another great trick. If you have silicone molds, These happen to be in an HGU 20 helmet, and you'll notice we have, this is a fiberglass jacket, the silicone, and then here we have plaster bandage. And we'll put plaster bandage in the mold after we're done. It does two things. One, it absorbs any excess oils that leach out of the silicone. Two, it holds the silicone in its original position so it can't sag and distort, and maintains the quality of the mold. I have molds that are well over 20 years old, 25 years old, that I still get great parts out of because we pull the plaster out, make a part, and then when we're done, like this, we put the plaster bandage back in them. So that's a great way to preserve silicone molds. You also see a lot of these patterns. Some are done in wood. This is from an Iggy Pop video. This is a little hand computer that he holds. That was the pattern, and that's just made out of wood. Different layers of wood, and then we vacuum over it. We talked about the fender from the Apollo rover. So part of the fender, the main body of the fender, also has little extension pieces that slide out. So for that, we made a vacuum form pattern so that we could make those extension pieces a little easier for some of the lower detail things that we've done in the past. And there's the back side of our hatch, so you can see it's like the one out there. It's got all the hardware on it, and it's got a couple little things to be left done to it, but it's pretty much done. We also have those for sale. I've got two, well, I got one left, if you want one. We'll take, oh, while we're here, we're talking about spares. There's some of our spare fittings. And this is mainly for the spacesuit stuff. So what you're looking at now are all the plastic pieces for like our B and C grade suits. And then here we have the metal pieces that are machined aluminum and anodized, and those are for our A grade suits. We also have replica fittings available on the Orbital Surplus eBay page. So if you really want to make your own suit, and you know, it's sometimes nearly impossible to find aluminum fittings, that we do have some for sale. And we'll have more in the future. But we'll take a quick trip into our soft goods shop. So this is our sewing shop, and Sally has been with me 25 years?
24.
How many?
24.
24 years. So she's the one that literally holds this place together here. So our cameraman's favorite suit, the Z2, we found, we had started this, and I totally forgot we started this. We were going through some archives, and we found brand new cover layers that had never been used. So we're just going to finish them up and have complete cover layers for the Z2 suit, which is an experimental suit that NASA was working on. And over here we have some of our Apollo cover layers. So these are all Teflon. These are brand new ones that are being made for project. And we have one of our old A7LB suits. This was from the Earth to the Moon. Excuse me, this is an A7L. And there's an A7L somewhere. Anyways, we got A7LB in there somewhere. And we also have a copy of an S1030 suit. So we talked about the helmet earlier. This is what the suit would look like. And here's the parachute vest. So those Coke fittings I showed you, they would go here and here. And the parachute harness is all inside of this. And the reason they put it in a vest is because parachute harness is worse than Christmas tree lights. Once you're on the ground in a pile, it's really hard to get it figured out where your legs and arms go. So to make it easier, they mount them in a vest here, and that holds all the straps in the correct spot. And then this is obviously worn over the body of the suit. And our neck rings, so here's a good example of one of our neck ring replicas. These work just exactly like the real neck rings. In fact, in the tested video, keep an eye out for the one that Adam has. So this is very similar to Gemini, color's different, but if you look at all these pins, as I unlock it, all those pins retract. And in these early neck rings, there were 16 pins. And each one has 2 or 3 components. And in this position, in the partially locked position, they're spring-loaded. And in the fully locked position, they're locked into the out position so they can't be pushed in. Well, what happens with that is if one of these is pushed all the way in, you can't lock the neck ring so you know the helmet isn't fully engaged. I'll show you another piece of this that's pretty interesting. We'll come over here, and you can be on this side. And we have here real shuttle cover layers. So this is a real shuttle EMU pants section. This one was manufactured in no, I'm not seeing the date. Oh, I can't make the date out because it's worn out. 87, I think. That was made in 87. But think of a spacesuit. Here's a shoulder. Think of it, most spacesuits are three separate structures, three separate components. You have a bladder, which is what we have here. Think of that like a trash bag liner. It has one job, and that's to hold air pressure, or in this case, oxygen pressure. It's to hold pressure. It doesn't have to be super, super strong, and like a trash bag, if you blow it up and you put too much pressure in it, it'll pop. So to keep it from popping, you put it in what is known as a restraint layer, and I'll pull these apart. So the bladder layer you see here, the yellow, is attached to this layer, and this is known as the restraint layer. So think of this like a nylon backpack. I think this is rayon, but think of this as a nylon backpack. If I take my bin liner, my trash bag, and I put it in a nylon backpack, I can blow it up, and the backpack takes all of the stress. The bladder only has to keep air from coming out. These heavy pieces of hardware are on what is known as an axial restraint, and basically you have, if you've ever played with a vacuum cleaner hose, you know if you put your hand over it, the whole hose gets shorter. Well, the suit has convolutes, like ribs on a vacuum hose, that allow it to move. But if you pressurize it, it would all get longer. So if you can see how long this is here, if I pull it all the way out, but you can see how short it is here. And that's because this axial restraint, and those run down the sides of the bending part to keep the suit from stretching too much. Now you have your trash bin, your bin liner, your backpack cover, and now you're going to put it in a windbreaker with a sweater because it's going to be cold and rainy. Well, in this case, in space, you have micrometeoroid particles, and you have solar radiation, and you want to insulate. So this is that wrinkling you hear. That is layers of Kapton and Mylar. The outer material is the same material we use, which is ortho fabric, and then the inner is a ripstop nylon. And this cover layer was made in '96, and this is a shoulder. So this would go on the EMU up here. And we have here a hard upper torso. So you saw the plugs outside. This is the display control module, and this is a 3D printed copy. And once the fabric cover goes over this, I have blueprints to this. I made the blueprints to match in this, so this matches the exact one. And so the cover, the real cover, will drop right over this. And here is the hard upper torso with a real cover on it. And the neck ring obviously goes here, and this shoulder piece would be attached to a bearing and go up in here. And there is our lightweight fiberglass hard upper torso. And then we have the waist disconnect. So this is a plastic copy of a medium size or large waist disconnect. And obviously there'd be a hole here. And the original is made out of stainless steel. When we make our A-grade ones, we make them out of aluminum. And we made this one so we could make a mold and do some in plastic for display suits. But I show you that because here, let me move this out of the way. Here is a real waist disconnect. Now, considerably smaller than our other mating side, but this is a real one. And you notice these pins, well, they work exactly the same way. When I open this thing up, watch all those retract. It's just an incredible piece of engineering, the fact that they're able to do this in an oval. And the same thing as with our neck ring. If it's in the semi-locked position, these are all spring-loaded. In the fully locked position, they're locked out. And you'll see this is the rubber seal. This black piece is a rubber lip seal that actually seals the suit. And then once again, our bladder, our cover layer, and our restraint layer. And this is the midriff section, and on the real EMU, this attaches to the hard upper torso on the bottom here. And then there's a big bearing that allows for rotation, and then the pants diaper section. And then we have a real boot here. So the reason we have these is NASA is starting to release the soft goods to museums and institutions, but they don't have any hardware because NASA didn't want to give up the hardware. So we've been asked, because I'm building all these things from blueprints, we've been asked to make the hardware to basically they can display the suit, because otherwise you've got a pile of fabric pieces that you really can't display. So while you're looking at those, I'll see if there's any other comments here. Somebody's, Paul A says, 20 to 25-year-old molds. Now that's some good maintenance and preservation. Yeah, that's one of the, when you invest all this money in some of this hardware and tooling and molds and things, it's a lot of money. You've got to protect that. I mean, we have 3D assets as well that we have to protect, but a lot of these physical things, they're expensive to produce. And we have, as you saw in the tested video, I have suits patterned off of Yuri Gagarin's training suit, Alexei Leonov's training suit, the first guy to do a spacewalk, the first guy in space. And I was fortunate enough to have those suits so I could pattern them. That's not going to happen again. So I have to protect all of those patterns. So we have boxes and boxes of patterns in archives, and we've started to digitize all of our patterns so we can preserve that that opportunity, because you go to a museum, they're not going to let you take a suit apart and start making patterns off of it. But watch the tested video. Adam gets a special treat with a real piece of hardware. It'll be, like I said, it'll be out next week. How are we doing on time? What do we?
A little over an hour.
All right, so we're over an hour. That was kind of what I was thinking, but we got a few other things, and hopefully, if Wes's arms don't fall off here. So Tom Essen says, among real spacesuit components that you have not yet had an opportunity to handle, what's at the top of your wish list to get an example? I don't know. I've really been fortunate because between the aerospace people we know and the collectors that I know, I've gotten to handle some pretty awesome stuff and gotten to look at some pretty awesome stuff. I am such a moose. I am so big. I mean, I don't have a wrist ring here, but I can't get my hand in a real glove. My hand is just too big. Oh, by the way, how many geeks out there know this watch? Okay, extra points if you can tell me what the significance of this watch. Adam was wearing a Speedmaster, but this is rarer, and there's a connection. And in the comments, see if you can tell me what that is. But I've gotten to all sorts of amazing pieces. And really, it's not so much getting my hands on, it's getting my body in. I would love to wear one of the current suits, either a Mark III or one of the Axiom suits. I would love to understand what it's like to wear one. And the reason is the next thing I was going to talk about is over here. This is the very first commercial spacesuit. This is the restraint layer that was ever built for a paying customer. And I built this for X-Core Aerospace through a company called Orbital Outfitters. And this was our very first prototype. It's very basic. I didn't want to do anything too radical from a design standpoint. But I was really happy that I was able to build a working pressure suit, and it actually had very good mobility and for the first try. This is the very original cover layer that went over it, and there was the Orbital Outfitters logo. And the second prototype that we built, once I learned that I could actually make a pressure suit that worked, which they're really a lot more complex than you can imagine. Hey, Pia? All right, well, I'll go grab something. I have something else that I wanted to answer a question about suits. Oh, I can do it here. Yeah, I can do it here. So the way this suit was made is based on the way you get in a real Russian suit. Basically, the bladder, which is this blue piece, this is a Gore-Tex material, And what's cool about Gore-Tex is it will hold air pressure, but it'll allow moisture to pass through it. It's a magic trick I don't understand, but it does do it. So that's how you get into the suit. It's a big bag. It's a big opening, big tube. So you climb into the suit. This cable clips onto the helmet, and then you over-center this latch and latch the helmet to the suit. Otherwise, you pressurize the thing and the helmet will be way over your head. But when you get in this thing, you basically, there's a way of folding it where you do it like this, and then you basically twist it up, and you have a rubber cord that you wrap around it, and then fold it and wrap around it, and then you tuck it in the restraint layer, and that's how you seal the suit. It's crazy, but it works great. It works great. So that's what we did on the first one, because the sealable zippers are really expensive, and we thought, we first got to make sure that we're making all the mechanical bits right, so you can actually move, because it's really hard. It's not nearly as simple as it seems. But I did have a comment. I don't have my sheet in front of me, so my apologies that I don't remember the fellow that asked this, but I was asked about the sealing zippers and what they're like. So this is a YKK sealable zipper, and an interesting little tidbit. In the original 2001 spacesuits, they actually use these zippers in the real suit. And I mean, you don't need them because they weren't sealing the suits up, they weren't pressurizing them, but I think they use them because the zippers are exposed and you can see them, and I will bet they wanted to make it look as real as possible. But the way these work is you have these teeth, and you see there's a rubber lip here, and as you pull the zipper down, and they're really sticky, you'll see it drives the two seals together, and it's sealed. And again, magic. I'm not sure the mechanics and how it works, but it works. And you find the same type of sealing zipper in dry suits. So we bought these zippers. This one is a 45-inch length, and that's because it has to go from somewhere about here through the crotch up to the back of the neck, so you can open the suit, get into it with your butt hanging out, get your head in the neck ring, and then stand up into it, so the distance from here to here is fixed. Unlike this, a rear entry suit doesn't need to have a separate cable to attach to the helmet to hold the helmet down. Anyways, there's the answer for the zipper. And here's a real backpack, a Pliss cover. So this is an honest to God, it could have been flown. This could have been a flown in space primary life support cover. And it has the zippers, so you can unzip the cover and get into it. And this is our replica piece inside of it. And it's all vacuum bag carbon fiber. So you can see how flexible and tough the material is. And this has been cut out because this is part of an air plenum that engages with part of the heart upper torso, and then this is the electrical connector that connects to the heart upper torso. But these were originally made for Space Cowboys, and they have been in dozens of projects since then. And now we're going to use them for, not this exact one, but we're going to use our pattern, like you saw in the vacuum form machine, to make internal structures for these real backpack covers. And we're going to spin this around. I'll show you another cool, fun thing with NASA, and so you were always talking about thermal stuff. It's kind of hard to see that says off, and then that says on. Well, those are switches, and they click on and click off, and in order to operate them so that you don't have those metal pieces exposed to thermal temperatures, you got all this insulation over it. And with the shuttle gloves, you can just grab the tab and pull it off and pull it on. They do the same thing with the glove heaters. There's a little tab on the gloves of the shuttle suit. So that's a pretty cool little feature. All right. Okay, so James Supp said, hard to see the face on the watch on the quick glance. Looks like it could be the same style as Omega that Wally Schirra wore in his Mercury mission. Nope, but I'll give you another close-up of it. There you go. I'll give you a hint, had to do with Apollo. Let's see, what else do we have here? Paul A. says, so museum suits don't include original NASA hardware. I didn't know that. I will appreciate them all the more now. Well, that's not completely true. A lot of the suits you see in museums do have the original hardware, except hardware doesn't have a shelf life like soft goods do. And so many times when the stuff is surplused, the hardware is held on to because it might have some future use. Like for instance, on the new Ox suit, the new launch entry suit used for the new Artemis program, it has Apollo fittings. Now, they're not original Apollo fittings, but they're the exact same design. So for training purposes, you could put Apollo fittings on, say, an ACES suit for training, and you'll see in the tested video, that's why we're actually making some of our fittings for training. And I saw that just as I glanced away, Paul A. says, I don't know that wristwatch, but the Omega Speedmaster has the nickname Man on the Moon. Yes, well, we'll touch on that as soon as somebody figures out why I'm wearing this. So, that's our soft goods department. And obviously, we have tons of fabric. All of our aerospace level fabrics are in a cabinet on the other side, because some of them at $500 a yard we keep locked up. Just not so I'm worried about stealing them, but I just don't want someone to not know what they are and accidentally use them to make a purse or something. Way up there, you can see some of the head casts that we've done on various people over the years. So we have, starting from the far left, we have Eddie Murphy, and then in white next to him, that's Gary Oldman. And then in the back, we have Marilyn Manson. And then here in the front in brown, that's Whitney Houston. James Spader, I think. Deep Roy. My friend who played Predator and played Harry and the Henderson, Kevin Peter Hall. And then see if somebody figures that guy out. I won't tell you. All right, we'll try to wrap this up. We'll go up front and, oh, so there was a chance to mix our metal forming and sci-fi. So when Iron Man 2 was going to come out, we were going to pitch them on the idea of being able to make an Iron Man suit out of aluminum and polish it all up and anodize it. And we got as far as roughing it out with a hammer. And of course, then what we would do is sand it and file it and get all of the little perfect machining-like details on it. But then I finally realized, they're just going to go back to Stan Winston or Legacy and have it done. So we never got any further with it. But I like to keep it around thinking that one day I might be able to do that. All right, we'll walk up front and we'll go through the armory. And for those waiting for the Greenwich harness, we have various bows. Like these are from Last Samurai here and back here. And then obviously arrows. These are all from Last Samurai. And then our treasure chests. A lot of people realize that I did the rich stuff for Goonies. So here's some of the original Goonie coins. And I also did the coins for Dracula. And so the name of my channel, Diligent Dwarves, was the name of my company originally. And we changed it while we were doing Dracula. But another little Easter egg, in the outside rim of this coin, it does say Diligent Dwarves Effects Lab backwards. So if you look at a picture, you can find a photograph of those coins online. If you look at a picture, you read it, it says backwards. It says Diligent Dwarves Effects Lab. I don't think anybody caught it. The Romanian translator was really working hard to try to figure out what it meant in Romanian. This is our weapons section from our medieval section. Okay, so Christoph HK112, you are correct. This is a bulova that Dave Scott wore on the surface of the moon when he wasn't supposed to. He claimed that the crystal had popped off his Omega Speedmaster, and he wore this. And it was part of a side deal that he was doing with the Bulova Watch Company to get their watch on the moon. And he got into trouble, and so he buried this in his safe deposit box and tried to not let anybody know about it. And then a few years ago, it finally came out what it was and the letter that he wrote to Bulova. And I think this sold for, someone out there can correct me, but I want to say it was $2 or $3 million, I think this watch sold for. And Omega used to say, the only watch worn on the moon. Well, nope, this one was worn on the moon too, and Omega made a copy of it. So good catch there. Oh, back to our weapons and armor. So a lot of times we'll make, for weapons, we'll make a steel, well, that's actually not one of ours. This one is. So we'll make a steel hero blade, and it's made out of thicker material so that it doesn't have a sharp edge. But the reason you often make aluminum ones is because you want them to be thicker, but you don't want them to be heavy. And when you start thickening a blade, it gets a lot heavier than a real sword blade was. Your average sword blade in the Middle Ages weighed about 1 pound per foot in just round numbers. So they didn't weigh very much at all. And so for film, we'll often make aluminum copies. See if I can find an aluminum one here. Wes, do you know where our aluminum ones are? Up here. Rubber. No. So we make rubber ones. That one's easy to find. We make a rubber one here. And we put fiberglass armatures in them so that they don't bend and stay bent. Well, trust us, we also make aluminum ones. We got so many swords here, it's tough to find all the ones we want. But we do, then also sometimes we'll make retractables. And now in the digital world, many times we'll just use a cut-off blade, and they'll digitally add the tip, and then the guy will get stabbed. And he's only getting stabbed with half the blade. And digitally, they add the other part, so it looks like he's really getting stabbed. Put that back there. And then we'll come around the corner here. And these are all done for Last Samurai. So these are also rubber, naginata. And these, because of curvature, we have a spring steel armature in them, so they remain stiff and won't get bent and stay bent. We used to use just metal armatures to keep them from wiggling, but the problem is if they bend, they're not going to spring back, and it can ruin a shot. And there's another story that I'll cover in some other video about that whole thing and why we start doing it. Banners from Last Samurai. And then we get into armor. So here's some of the different armors that I've done. These are pretty accurate armors. I'm going to probably do a video on this guy here. This is an early 14th century when it had 2 helmets, had an over helmet. And I've done some interesting things with the legs, which we'll talk about in another video. The gauntlets are based on an effigy, which again I'll go into more detail on. This armor is sort of famous on the internet. I built this a ton of years ago to show guys that you could make an armor out of plastic and not make it look like you were wearing a pickle barrel or bad carpet for SCA combat. And it's based on one that's in the Met that Bashford Dean cobbled together out of various parts and sort of made up an armor. So it really should be called the Bastard Dean armor because it's a mishmash of stuff that doesn't belong together. And then we have a mid-15th century Italian, then a German, and the one there in front of the purple is a Maximilian armor that was also made by Robert McPherson, who did the preliminary work on my grenade. And I got married in that suit. My wife and I had a wedding themed formal any period. So it was quite nice, and that's the first time, that armor is the first time that I got to wear a real armor. I mean, that was made the way it really should be made, and I was stunned at how well it moved. In fact, I was doing competition fighting in this, and it was in a mixed weapons tournament, and I came upon an opponent that was really good with greatsword, with two-handed sword, and I wasn't that good. I mean, I'd fight with him, but not very good. So I figured, okay, this is gonna be quick. Well, I won the fight. I was shocked. And the guy came up to me afterwards, he goes, hey, nothing to take away from your fighting. He says, but to be honest, the reason you won is when I took a swing at you and you ducked out of the way as fast and as far down as you did in that armor, I was stunned. I could not believe that it is possible to move that fast and that flexible in a suit of armor. and I basically froze, and you hit me. Hey, at this point, any way I can get it. So that shows you an idea of how flexible it was. And then I'm going to have a series of videos on the Greenwich armor. So this is the shoulder of the Greenwich. You can see the mobility of the shoulder and the springiness of the material. I'm going to be doing separate videos on all these. That's actually why they're out here on the table. The arms, the gauntlets, and I'll cover this more in detail. So subscribe and tune in to those videos. Right now there'll be a series of shorts, and then I will do one video with more detail and with all the stuff strung together. And we'll cover the leg armor, and we'll cover all of it. But for this video, it was mainly sort of an intro to the company and what we do. What we have here is an Indian armor. Interestingly, the Greenwich was from the Wallace collection in London. It's another museum you should definitely check out. This is another armor in the Wallace collection. It's a 18th century Indian armor called the Coat of 10,000 Nails. And I've always loved this armor. And when we did the Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy, production design had done the typical late 16th century closed helms with the jutting out jaw, and they just had a row of them. And I said to the costume designer, I said, look, this is a Victorian mansion, and this is at a time when they really mixed all sorts of armor together, because these guys, you know, people, collectors of that time, were trying to get their hands on anything, and unscrupulous dealers were selling them anything, made up, mixed together. So the armors in this hall should be an eclectic collection of armors, not just kind of all the same. And so we did a series of drawings, and the green armor was in the movie. Not that Gothic armor, but a Gothic armor like that was in the movie. The black and white one here at the end was in the movie. And this one I wore in the film. And if you watch the film, remember the film, I try to take Eddie Murphy's head off with a flail in this, and then we end up killed. But there was going to be a huge battle scene with all sorts of antics going down that hall, and they cut it. I mean, it's too bad because it was a lot of fun. It was a multiple day shooting, but anyways, I got to wear that. And then this was in some movie. This is a display piece we did for Monsterpalooza of the Dracula armor. This one has had a little bit of the finish work done, or some of the finish work that should have been done on the that was done on the real armor. It's pretty good, but not nearly as good as the bust that we're doing in the other room. But again, all these pieces came out of the original molds. While you're looking at that, I'll look at some questions here. So Paul A is asking, do you have a German-style greatsword that has the blade that goes zigzag? Yep, right here. Zweihander. So these enormous swords look like they'd be super heavy, but they really aren't. They're really quite light, and I'll do a video on those as well. And there's also an interesting reason this is done, because if you're going to block a spear or grab a spear, a round spear is not going to be able to just slide down the straight edge. It's going to want to hang up on these. And if you strike the spear behind the metal reinforce, this is such a small, with this curve hitting another curve, you get such a small contact patch that it will better shatter the shaft of the spear, so the deadly end, the pointy end, gets broken off, and now you can penetrate the line. It's a pretty clever design. Okay, so we'll wrap this up, and we'll come in here and we'll show you our 3D print room and our, there you go, our 3D print room and our library. So here's our 3D print room. So we have some resin printers, some small anycubic printers, PO Poly, medium-sized printer, and then back here we have a giant PO Poly printer. And then we have some filament printers. And if you watch Michael and his prop feed, you'll see he had Creality printers too. And he's had a problem with them, and you can see we're having a problem with Creality printers. So out of the 8 printers I have 4 of them that don't work. One of them, the entire head loaded up, and I had to take it apart, and it's still got chunks of plastic welded into it, and it's really annoying because I've had other printers that work incredibly well, and it's just kind of annoying that I have that many printers that are broken. I mean, I can fix a couple of them, but and then for our big peel poly printer, this was printed. This was 3D drawn and then 3D printed, and it has magnets in it, so you can change the head. And this was in a recent film, which I don't remember the title they're carrying. What?
Me time.
Me Time. It was in the film Me Time. Pretty nice work. Guys that did that did a really nice job of painting it and sculpting it. I don't know how much of the film you see it, but here it is. Then our research library. So because I'm a big fan of historical arms and armor, almost all of these are historical arms and armor, ranging from books printed in the 1600s and 1700s all the way up to books that were published in the last couple of years. And I have some real pieces of armor, a Mauryan and a German arm. Those are original pieces. I think this is like 1560-ish Italian, and this is German, about 1580. And then we also, for space, we have our own space reference, and we typically will do different books depending on the suit, and then we'll do usually a couple volumes. So this volume might be just photographs of the Ace's suit, Ace's helmet, and then we'll have a book that is just our internal drawings. I have to grab one, doesn't have much in it, but it'll be our internal drawings and notes. A lot of these have been transferred to that thing I showed earlier. And then sometimes we get lucky and we get blueprints. So we have here, get one that looks more interesting. Here is a helmet neck ring for neck ring helmet A6L. So this is the model of helmet before the A7L. These drawings were drawn in 1967. And so this is the helmet side of the ring. And we'll talk about this more in detail, but if you look, this plate is where the air comes in, where the oxygen comes in the back of the neck. And you'll see this is really tiny. And that was the reason they went from the blue neck rings to the red neck rings, is they had to enlarge that. And I'll talk about that more in detail. Here is, okay, so here is an A7L. And if we compare, you can see the difference of the opening. So it's little details like that it's kind of interesting history. It don't really affect the movies because we make all of ours with a big one. But we do make ones with blue neck rings and red neck rings, depending on the mission that they're going to be on. And then, like, here's a Apollo helmet drawing. Another neck ring drawing. So these we just recently got. And then we talk about the, this is kind of fun. It's the lunar rover. So there's an original blueprint of the lunar rover. Obviously a side view, and then the other drawing is a front and back view. But we're talking about how we do some of our, so I made these binders up for original shuttle drawings. So these are some of the original space shuttle drawings. Now, I don't have anything super technical here, you know, the guts. I only have basically the drawings for the outer pieces, the pieces that are going to shape the suit or make the suit have its volume, because I'm not obviously replicating all of the functionality of the suit. But here is a photograph of what a real hard upper torso looks like with those metal inserts that I was telling you about that would be mounted into the fiberglass, and that's the fiberglass. So our replicas are just like this, except we don't put these inserts. I do have neck rings that work, but I don't put all these other inserts in them. And that mini workstation I showed you mounts to those 2 points there. Here's a helmet drawing. So this is the visors and the specifications for plating, sunshades, more visor, side sunshades, some of the other hardware, and I think in the back here, in the back I have the lights. So we're lucky, and it's again because of the years of doing really high quality work. Then I've had I've been fortunate enough to have the space people, give me access to this stuff. And again, it's not like it's some giant super secret. I mean, some of it might be subject to ITAR, the trade agreement that I talked about in Adam's video. But for the most part, the stuff we're doing isn't at the specifications. It doesn't have the material science behind it. So you couldn't really use them in a real suit. Take a quick look at questions here. Afford lunar rover, yeah, I really want to build a lunar rover. Thomas Essen asks, is there a particular book that you find to be especially a lifesaver, as in, without that one book, your job would be significantly harder? Well, it depends on, the project, right? We're talking about an armor book or a space book. I mean, any book is valuable with the information. I shouldn't say any book. I've seen some books that were filled with erroneous and bad information, but I always try to go to the original source. A lot of times I'll even look on the internet to find stuff, but the problem with the internet is if you don't have a base knowledge of what you're looking at, it is so easy to look at total garbage and not know you're looking at total garbage. So one of the advantages of some of these books is you're hoping that the author that wrote them knew what they were talking about and was putting in stuff that's really correct. One book I like, if you're really getting into advanced spacesuits, this is a scientific and technical book on advanced spacesuits, and I use this a lot when I was designing and building for a suit, understanding the mechanics, because I never went to school to be an engineer. So while I'm okay at math, it's the advanced math and the engineering math that I'm not good at. So I have guys that work for me that's what they're good at. And so I'll come up with the raw concepts, and then we'll sit down and crunch the numbers. Or in some cases, because of the techniques we have, I'll just build it and we'll pressure test it and see how well it works. I'm kind of proud to be in this book. Book by Ken Thomas, U.S. Spacesuits. This has got a great collection of the various technologies of spacesuits over the years, from the very early ones to all the different prototype Apollo suits. And in the back, they have my suit. I don't know where it is. It's in here somewhere. But I did make the back cover. So that's me in the very first commercial spacesuit. So that's kind of fun to have actually been in a book for, I never thought I'd be in a book for spacesuits. I always thought it'd be some movie book or something else, but that was kind of fun. A carbon fiber version of the Orbital Outfitters helmet, the very first commercial space helmet. In fact, in the movie Ad Astra, this is the helmet design we used. So it was kind of fun that the first commercial space helmet made it to the moon in a movie long before it ever even made it into space. And we have different components, like this is one of our Mark II. This is our second prototype. This is one of the elbow joints, and this is the type of joint that I invented. It's really based on the rolling convolute that was developed by Litton and a guy named Bill Elkins. But I wanted to see if I could make a soft version of it, and it works very well. There's some other things that we've done with these that worked incredibly well. When we did our prototype, we had Oakley. They made us a custom pair of shoes for our commercial spacesuit. This is the original design we did for SpaceX. I was a consultant for SpaceX for their manned program, and that's the original design we did for them. And growing up around auto racing, my mother was good friends with one of the co-inventors of the Hans device, which is a restraint system for a helmet to keep you from having an internal decapitation if you have a hard G-force load and your neck can stretch past and your spinal cord can do this and basically sever your spinal cord. So the Hans device straps underneath your shoulder belts and keeps your helmet from being able to go too far forward. And I know that that sort of impact is also worrisome to landing, because if the capsule lands at the wrong angle, and there is lots and lots of testing done to make sure these capsules land at the orientation they want them to. But if they have an off angle landing, they have to make sure the astronauts are protected and they can't get necks broken or ribs broken or something. So the idea was that maybe I would incorporate a Hans device into the helmet. And then this is Rob Lowe's vest that we built for a Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial where Colonel Sanders is an astronaut. And I also have designs over here for what we did for Virgin Galactic. And then we have a real shuttle cool suit here. And over in the corner, we have a real shuttle launch entry suit. Pretty sure that one's flown. That's actually, I think, a mission-used suit prior to Challenger. And so this is our research library. And we'll end in my office, where we have a couple other little goodies. And in the halls here, you see some other movies we've done. I'll take a quick look at questions. The comments. So I'll try to answer some of these questions after we finish this. But okay, so then my office, I got most of my armor has been disassembled, so I can do some videos of it. But we have some fun things here. So here's our replica of the lunar hammer. And if for those of you that know the Dave Scott video or the film they did where he's on the surface of the moon and he drops a hammer and drops a falcon feather. So when he was standing on this side, if you were the camera, and when he drops the hammer, it falls at the exact speed as the feather. It hits the surface like that and falls over. And so this is a display base that we made for our replica Apollo 15 hammer. And we also have the earlier Apollo 11 style hammer with its locking system to lock onto the extension handle. And then we have the contingency sampling tool and the grabbers, the tether hook that Neil Armstrong used coming down the ladder the first time, the entrenching tool. I love the brush. And this is just like the real one. And then one other fun thing, let's turn that around so it doesn't fall over. So in space, in the Apollo program, they had what was known as a Cobra cable. It got the nickname for the astronauts because this is the communication piece that snapped onto the electrical fitting. And then this sat connected there. And you can imagine this thing floating in 0G. It looks like a Cobra. That's how it got the nickname. And so the bio belt that they wore and the communication, the Snoopy cap, all that communication and data went through this and went through this cable to the command module. And kind of the fun thing here is this is Dave Scott's cable from the Apollo 15 mission. So this was in the command module on that mission. That's kind of a fun piece to have. And then our ACES suit, that's a nearly exact replica of an ACES suit. And then here we have a picture of our first commercial spacesuit, myself, Rick Searfoss, shuttle commander, Jeff Feige, who was our CEO, and Dennis Gillum, who was our engineer. And they were doing a test in the Lynx space plane. And unfortunately, X-Corps ran out of money, and then we ran out of money, and that's as far as it got. But we did have two fully working prototypes that we built, and we were working on our third and fourth one when we had to stop. But so anyways, that's Global Effects. And I thank you for spending all this time with me, and hopefully you learned a thing or two, and hopefully you hit that subscribe button, and we'll try to bring you more fun videos. And I'll look at the comments, and if you got things that you want to see more of, put them in the comments. And I try to answer all the comments that I can. Obviously, I think my Greenwich helmet video has got like 12 or 13,000 comments, and I'm sure I've missed a bunch of them, but I'll do my best, and hopefully we can do this again. So, ciao. See you later.